I think it can truly improve the research in law to try to apply some kind of vision of more data to study problems and to see how things evolve in some kind of field or another one. I even brought here a quote today from a professor from Harvard Law about comparative law and the use of quantitative research. I'm not sure if you guys do work with comparative law. From what I learned yesterday, I didn't know about it, but from what I learned yesterday, comparative law is a study of the difference of law between countries, right? So you study how one law works in one country, another law works in another country. And for that professor in Harvard, the key there, or one thing that can help a lot comparative law, is you trying to understand different countries by making samples of them. So you sample laws and how it works in maybe 100 or more countries and try to understand how those laws are affecting the populace or the population, or giving some kind of interesting result in the end. So by sampling a lot of countries, have a good idea instead of just comparing two or just comparing something in a more qualitative way. So again, I'm far from the best or whatever my brothers just said before, professor in Brazil in terms of quantitative research, but I do work with it a lot. And from my early age in the academia, I was an engineer. So I was working and I was an electrical engineer, and then I made a master's in electrical engineering as well, both with focus in a specific field of that we call here at PUC, we call it data support systems, or support systems for decision making. So all my focus was on statistics and machine learning to understand data. And because of that, I went to work at a company, a big company, because I heard of it, an American company called SAS, SAS. Maybe not, since you are all lawyers here, but anyway, SAS is one of the biggest software companies in the world. It's an American company based in North Carolina. It's one of the biggest companies in the world for statistical software and solutions. So they sell for enterprises big solutions for data storage and data analysis. And I was there a consultant for customer analytics. That's analyzing customer data, understanding patterns in customer data to try to understand behavior. So that was my early career there. Then I went for my PhD in marketing, and learning marketing was something that was very important for me because I was working a lot with customer data already, but I didn't know the theory of marketing. So I went there for my PhD in the Federal University here in Rio de Janeiro, and I got my PhD in 2010. And since then I joined PUC, this university here in Rio, which is one of the best private universities in Brazil. Brazil has a lot of good public universities, but PUC is one. PUC Rio is one of the best. There are many PUCs, but the one in Rio is one of the best private universities in Brazil, where my brother as well, Daniel here, went for his PhD. And when I joined PUC, I joined as a marketing professor. So I went in as a marketing professor, and with my focus in research, particularly aimed at both customer relationship management, which is something that I brought since then with me, since SAS with me, because CRM, or customer relationship management, is tied up with understanding customer behavior through data and trying to develop long-term relationships with customers. But also my PhD thesis was about customer adoption of innovations. So my focus there was trying to understand how consumers see innovations and how they think about adopting it. I would suggest you all to read this book here. Let me give you guys, because it has to do with law as well. I'll type it in the chat here.
So as he's saying, comparative law, and what we're studying in this study group, we're studying ADR, which comparing and using data, quantitative research is essential, in arbitration, mediation, and to see if it really works. That's why myself and Cristiane, along with Jorge help, we're doing some surveys, and then we're going to try to publish some papers. And of course, we're using their methodology, because I'm a humble lawyer here, and I don't know how to do and how to analyze the data. And if you're going to study, if you're here and you're going to study technology, digital technologies, to compare and to use data is also essential. If you're talking about AI, for example, why is it better? Where's the data for that to support your argument, for example? Why is it worse? So that's why we invited here today Professor Jorge, so he can contribute with us and just tell us a little bit how is it done in practice, and how, because he's a publishing machine. He published dozens of papers around the world. And what I realized, and please, Jorge, correct me if I'm wrong, is that when you do quantitative research, it's a lot easier to publish while when you do qualitative research, comparing, because you develop the model, you gather the data, and you have a new result, a new contribution. When we're doing qualitative research, you are basically comparing authors' opinions and then concluding something. So, but if you can combine both methods, quantitative and qualitative, then you have a great paper in my thinking. So that's why he's here today, and I'm sure he's going to contribute a lot. Thanks for being here, my dear brother.
It's a pleasure. But again, as I was saying here, this book, Diffusion of Innovations by Everett Rogers, I wrote it wrong there, Christiane corrected me. It's something that maybe is truly interesting for everyone here in law to read as well. Because actually there are examples there on how laws are diffused. For example, in the USA, for what I see there, for what I read there, in the USA, California is one of the main states where new laws come about. And they appear in California, like anti-smoking law or maybe women protection law. It comes in California, it starts in California in a state as a state law, and then it diffuses around the country. And maybe the same can happen around the world as well. Maybe laws beginning in one country and going around the world. So diffusion innovation is something that I love. It's one of my main research themes, and I loved it first because of this book. It's just an amazing read. If you guys read it, there are examples on all sides. It's truly amazing. And for law, maybe that truly helps, not only for understanding this diffusion of law itself, like I said, in California, in the USA, but also on how behavior in citizens change when laws come about. So when some kind of law change, maybe that is intended to drive better behavior by citizens, right? Because that will control some kind of not interesting behavior that was happening before. And how does that get adopted? How do people respect that or not? We're seeing that here in Rio now, because in Rio, there is kind of a lockdown, so people should not go to the beach, but people still go to the beach. So there is a law prohibiting people from going public places and going to the beach, but people are not respecting it. So that's also some kind of way of understanding innovations and how people react to it. So it's a very interesting thing. But as my brother said before here, in terms of publishing with quantitative papers and quantitative research, I do think in a very pragmatic view that analyzing quantitative data is a lot easier. Of course, I do have a background in engineering and everything else, but the thing is, even with students, my undergrad students, I have made a lot of final papers for them, with them as an advisor in undergrad students, not PhD, not master's, undergrad students. And I can teach them to analyze data in a very straightforward manner in like 2 hours. So it's not something that you need to understand the mathematics behind of it. It's something I'll show you guys today as an example here, how to analyze data with like 2 clicks in 6 seconds, and you get a result and your thesis is done. If you have good data, analyzing data is something that can be done very easily with amazing software we have today and very intuitive software we have today. So analyzing data is not that complicated if you don't have a background in mathematics and statistics. So you can do it very easily. And what happens is, And that's something, that's an anecdote that I had with another professor here at PUC. And this professor is amazing at qualitative interpretative research, right? So he loves interviewing a lot of people, doing focus groups and getting all the data together and understanding whatever people's discourse was and whatever they were talking about and whatever important things emerge from that data, from that interview data. But I went to help him advise a student that wanted to do something about the adoption of soccer fan clubs promotions. So he was talking about soccer and fanatics and how consumers were consuming products from soccer teams here in Brazil. And he wanted to do that in a quantitative way. So he asked me to help him because he doesn't have a background at all in quantitative research. So he asked me to help him build the survey and then analyze the data. And so we built a survey to analyze how this fanatic spirit in consumers help them be interested in consume more soccer products. And we built that. We got like 400 results, 400 respondents in that data. And then he came to my room one day and said, okay, George, my survey is done. We have 400 data here. So let's analyze it. I said, okay, sit down here. You and his students, sit down here. We'll do it. And in 2 hours, we're done. The thesis for the student was done in 2 hours. And then he said, again, he's very used to analyzing a lot of interpretative and interview data, right? So he said, wow, this is amazing, because if the situation was flipped out and you came into my room with a student of yours with a lot of interview data, maybe 1,000 pages of interview or transcribed interviews, and you said, okay, please analyze that for me. Of course he could, but that would take 2 months, not 2 hours, because analyzing qualitative data in a very profound way, in a very thorough way, is something that takes time. It can yield amazing results, but it takes time. Statistics doesn't. If you know, of course, you need to know the steps, right? But I don't need to know the mathematics behind it. You just need to know how to use the software, and you get very fast results. Of course, all those results are irrelevant if you don't have good data. And that is one of the biggest problems. You need to have good data. And having good data is the key to having good results. So I have a small presentation here today just to talk about and to inspire you guys. I mean, a lot of pictures and not a lot of text. Like, I was inspired one time with a presenter, a very good guy in marketing called Darren Dahl. He was an editor for the Journal of Consumer Research, one of the biggest ones in consumer research. And he made a presentation that was amazing with just pictures. And I'm trying to emulate him since then. So let's do that and talk about the important topics in quantitative research, okay? And in the end, I'll show you guys, it's just 1 hour, right? Daniel, just 1 hour?
Yeah, 1 hour,
okay.
Whatever you feel like.
Whatever you guys need to ask also, please do. And I'm here to try to help you guys, or try to inspire you guys into maybe doing a little bit of quantitative research.
Is it true there are truths, lies, and statistics?
Well, it's true that you can arrive at a lot of interesting conclusions with statistics, even if they are not that true.
Nice.
So again, this is the theme of the research, and my name here again. In Brazil, it's interesting. In Brazil, George here, my name is not said George like in English. We say Jorge. But when Americans see that, they think Jorge, like in Spanish. But Jorge is further from Jorge in Portuguese than is George. So I prefer to be called George, if you guys will. George is better than Jorge, so don't use the Jorge at all.
Elisaveta, how is Jorge in Russian, please?
Yuri.
I thought it was Yuri, but Elisaveta corrected me. It's not Yuri.
It is not Yuri, Georgi, and a small name from Georgi is Zora.
Zora?
So Georgi, George Georgi.
Georgi. It's like Italian, Giorgio, or something like that. Okay, so this is a little bit about me here again. Again, I research innovation and customer relationship management and also digital marketing. So this is my Google Scholar profile. My H index now is 14, and these are my most cited papers here. Like the first one here actually is not quantitative, is a book chapter I wrote about mobile learning and how people are adopting mobile learning to learn more and to use it better to engage students. But the second paper here is my thesis, is the impacts of technology readiness and emotion and cognition in Brazil in the adoption of innovation. So, and this is a book of marketing I wrote. And this is a machine learning paper here, data mining and evaluation of churn in telecom industry. So these are my main most cited papers here.
The last paper of this page is really good.
Yeah, the last paper here actually has Daniel, and it has a lot, 50. Probably it's your best cited paper, Daniel.
Yeah, and my merit, and just to open my book here, my only merit in this paper was collecting all the data. Okay, I was the data collector. That's what I did in this
which
paper.
is an important, but here actually, and Christiane is also here, right? Christiane is the main author of this paper here. This is her master's thesis. This is, I was her advisor in her master's, and this is her master's thesis here. So this is her paper, her son here. Okay, so this is the code I got yesterday to inspire you guys in terms of law. And this guy from Harvard, I'm not sure you guys know him, Holger Spaman, maybe he's famous or not, but apparently he's from Harvard Law School. And he wrote this paper in 2009. And he was talking about how it is important, again, to get large samples and to do quantitative research for understanding problems regarding comparative law there. And there is this quote here that he says, I have little doubt that large sample quantitative research designs are in principle desirable in comparative law. The real question is whether they can be implemented in practice, whether it is possible at a reasonable cost to construct measures of the relevant phenomena that are sufficiently meaningful to generate convincing results. And this is the point I was talking about before, is you getting good data. Because of course, in many different scenarios, but getting good data is the challenge here. And getting data that truly is aimed at your research objectives. And this is where the discussion between quantitative and qualitative research rises, because of course, it's all about your problem, your research question, right? So you need to adapt research questions to use qualitative or quantitative research. But whatever you want to answer will guide you towards one or the other, naturally. Because when you want to understand some kind of reason behind behavior, you kind of need to do qualitative research. But if you understand how behavior repeats itself and how behavior happens in a very large way, or in a very common way, it's better to use quantitative research. So in law in particular, maybe, and of course I was talking to my brother about that before, every lawyer has customers, right? You have clients, and those clients have different views, of course, of how maybe different offices of lawyers perform, or if they are being delivered justice or not, or if they should act in a certain way to achieve some kind of goal. And since you're talking about clients there, you can truly do a lot of research in terms of customer analysis, like I usually do in marketing, but you can do a lot of customer analysis, understanding the satisfaction or the trust the consumer or the client has in the lawyer, and the trust the client has in the system, the whole system itself of law and of the country. So all that can be done using quantitative research, if you try to understand all that kind of scenario where people are there and are behaving in certain ways, and you are trying to understand how that behavior repeats itself or not. And the idea here is, and I also teach a course in our PhD course there at Bookie called Marketing Theory. And the idea is trying to arrive at theory. Every research you kind of do, at least in marketing, I'm not sure in law, but at least in marketing, is you trying to get to theory. And general theories are your dream all the way, because general theories are what truly describe behavior in a very generalizable way. And that is our goal here, actually. Our goal is trying to achieve what we call generalizability. You guys know that term? Maybe not in law. What generalizability is, you trying to understand how a lot of things do happen in a very constant way. So you're not talking about a specific case, you're talking about everyone. So if I can say, or if I can arrive at a conclusion that this kind of behavior repeats itself in a very common way with a lot of different people, that maybe can guide you to theory about how that happens. So theory is you trying to understand phenomena in a very general way. And if you can describe, if you can make a good theory, like the theory of evolution, for instance, it can withstand a lot of counterproofs. People can disprove it because that is a very general theory. So whatever evidence arrives, it usually adds to the theory instead of detracting from it. So you're trying to understand or to do that in research when I do, in particular, quantitative research. So our goal is to try to develop a vision of some kind of phenomena that explains it in a very powerful way, in a very general way. So it's not about specific cases, it's about everyone. So that's where quantitative research does shine. So we're trying to understand what we call here the population. The population is everyone of interest, of course. It's not everyone in a specific country or everyone regardless of anything. Because whenever you're trying to define your population, you understand whoever is a target or important for that kind of problem. So the population is not everyone, it's just maybe, for instance, if I'm researching consumers and I'm researching people who consume makeup products like lipsticks or whatever, I'm not truly looking at a population of everyone in Brazil or in the world, because most men won't use makeup. So those guys are not inside my population of makeup consumers. Of course, there might be men who want to use makeup, but those are not the majority. So maybe in the population I will define will be women that consume makeup. So I'm already focusing particular, but that is my whole population. Okay, so I'm trying to understand women and how they consume makeup there. So you define your population based on your problem, but that should be very general, like the biggest group you could get. And then to understand that population and arrive at this lofty goal of getting generalizable results, you get a sample, because you cannot interview, you cannot get data, you cannot survey maybe millions of people, maybe tens of millions of people, maybe billions of people that are inside that populations. That is not cost effective at all. And that's again what the guy said here, Sparman said here, because it needs to be done in a way that it can be implemented with reasonable cost. So getting good samples require you defining well populations that are of interest to you, and then trying to get a good sample that is representative of that population. So this is the first problem of quantitative research. And again, maybe the main problem and the most important thing you can focus on and do well is getting good data that is representative of your population. So if you're trying, maybe in law here, if you're trying to understand how criminals are reforming themselves in prisons, like they get condemned for crimes, and then how people are truly getting out of prisons and being good citizens and behaving well, we're not performing crimes again, right? So trying to understand that, maybe that's interesting for criminal law, I don't know. So you get a lot, you get, what is your population? It's all criminals in your country maybe that were locked up and got released. That's your population. every criminal that got locked up and was released. So that's your whole population. And how do you sample that? Of course, you might be truly lazy and go to your closest prison and just look at those prisoners that came out of there. But that is a biased sample. That's not a true generalizable sample, because maybe that prison in particular that's close to your home, it's easier for you guys to go there and try to get data from that prison. It's just one prison in maybe hundreds in Brazil. And maybe that prison has an amazing guy there that teaches everyone there how to be a better person. And maybe that everyone that comes out there does behave in a better way than people did doing other prisons. So that sample with that one single prison is biased. So I need to get a random sample of all the prisons in Brazil and maybe 2 or 3 criminals or ex-criminals that came out of there and see how they behaved in the next 10 years maybe. So that's me trying to get a good sample for this population. So again, this is very important. You need to be sure what your population is, define it well, and try to get the best sample you can, the best unbiased sample you can from that population, because this sample will truly be the cornerstone of how your results can be trustworthy or not. So getting good data, and as the guy said before there from Harvard Law, this is costly, okay? This costs. And you need to define how to do it well and how to get the most data you can. And again, since we're going for generalizability, you do need more data. More data is always better. And for quantitative research, what is a good quantity of data? That's a question everyone asks. It's not 2, 3, 4, 10 interviews or 2, 3, 4 answers. It's like we guys probably do a lot in law, like you get maybe 2, 3 cases and compare that. That's okay. That's qualitative research, but not quantitative research. When you get 2, 3 cases and compare that, that's what we call in marketing, we call it a case study. When you do a case study, you get 2, 3 companies, see how they work and see how that compares to theory, and try to get some insights from that. That's okay, but that is qualitative research. That is not quantitative research. So to get quantitative research, you need larger samples, and larger samples depend on the method you're going to use, but usually you do want something at least above 30 to be very low there. To do some kind of hypothesis testing, you kind of need at least 30 to do confidence intervals, but usually you need hundreds of data points to try to do some kind of modeling. If you go for machine learning, usually you need, which is not a classical statistics, if you go for machine learning, you kind of need tens of thousands of data. I just advised a student here at PUC, a master's student, that got 500,000 customer purchase data from a supermarket chain here in Rio. So we were analyzing how people were purchasing supermarkets, how they were contacting the call center from supermarketing, how they were interacting with the supermarket via cell phones, via applications and cell phones, in mobile phones. So we got a lot of data from those behaviors of customers with that supermarket, and we analyzed that with machine learning, trying to understand patterns with machine learning there. I'll talk a little bit more about machine learning soon, so you guys understand what it is about. But anyway, more data is better, and getting data that is truly representative of your population, because only then you can be generalizable. Only then you can understand true behavior across all your phenomena. If not, you're getting biased samples, then you are just analyzing a small snippet of the whole picture. So that's not what you truly are aiming for if you truly want a quantitative study that is truly generalizable. And the point is, and again, going back to the Harvard guy there, the point is how to get good data. And we have a lot of different ways of getting data. And I'll talk about the 3 main ones here now. And maybe you guys can relate to that in law. Maybe I'll try to give an example of each of these kinds of data in law and how to get them, okay? but you should truly help me out here and maybe ask questions. So maybe we can try to get together there into how this could be applied to law. Because whenever I think about law and data in law, what I think about is this. I think about data from prisons. I think about data from the police. That's a lot of data. I think about data from companies results. So because that is tied up with taxes and everything else for tax law, right? So we have a lot of that. And I think about data from people as consumers or clients from law firms. So that's what I think about in data in law. But maybe there are other things. Maybe for arbitration, for instance, like Daniel even did a paper now with Cristiani, or they're getting the survey. I'll show the survey here today for that paper about end user license agreements and arbitration, right? So, and trust regarding whatever that. So they're talking about their, or they got data from customers who were maybe aware, maybe not aware of the end user license agreements they signed up when they agreed for a game, they agreed for some kind of software. And maybe those customers, they had some kind of good insight there, or some kind of interesting way of seeing how the company is solving those issues they might have in terms of arbitration, right? So they might trust or not those solutions. They might think it's good or not. They might be satisfied or not with that. So we're kind of looking there at customer satisfaction or customer views or customer trust regarding companies. So that is an interesting way for me, at least in terms of marketing, to see law and how law impacts customer profiles and customer interest in companies. But again, there might be other ways there of getting law data that you guys might be aware. I might not. So please help me out here if you guys think something about it. But anyway, the different kinds of data they usually get in marketing and in business administration. But again, we need to adapt that a little bit for law here. So one of the main ways is you getting surveys for getting quantitative data. It's not interviews, is you getting surveys. So surveys are what? Surveys are big questionnaires that you devise. It can be bigger or not. It should not be that big if to get more answers. The smaller it is, the better. But usually it's a little big because we need to take a lot of care about what we're measuring. That's one of the biggest things in survey. You need to be truly careful to get the correct answers or the correct questions, to get the correct data, to measure what we call usually constructs. You guys know what a construct is? Or you guys use that in law? I don't know what a construct is. A construct is a concept. It's usually a soft concept, okay? Like beauty is a construct. Beauty. What is beauty? It's hard to define beauty, right? But beauty is a construct. Justice is a big construct. So what is justice? I need to understand the nuances of justice to try to ask someone about justice. That's the point here. So if you're talking about justice, which is something important for law, I think, if you're talking about justice, how do I ask someone if that is just or not? You just go point blank and ask, okay, do you think this is just? Or what do you think justice is? People don't have that answer in the tip of their tongues. They can answer you correctly what is if they think that is just or not. That's just too straight. So what you need to do is, and what you do for surveys is, you get or you build or you get from another study in the literature, you get a scale that measures justice, that measures that concept, that measures that construct. So what is a scale? A scale is a combination, or is a group of maybe 5, 4, 10 questions that measure all the subdimensions and nuances of justice, and of trust, and of beauty, and of satisfaction, and of intention, and of whatever construct you come about. Okay, so that scale, those 3, 4, 5, 10, 20 questions, maybe, they are asking you in affirmatives how do you react to things that are related to justice? And they were tested before in terms of statistics and in terms of the meaning of all those items, all those questions, and they were found usually by recent literature or by literature that you got from your field that truly measures that concept. So the easy way to go here in surveys is you getting scales that to measure the constructs you want that were already published in papers in respected journals. That's the easy way to go about it. To develop a scale yourself to measure any kind of new construct or to remeasure a construct that was already talked about in the past, that usually takes a PhD thesis. So I don't truly advise you guys going that way. So to truly get a scale going, it's a multi-method study with quantitative and qualitative parts to get all those concepts together and to measure it all in a good way. Okay, so don't try to develop scales unless you truly want to do that. It's a very awesome paper to write, even because you will be cited a lot. Because people cite, again, they are trying to use the scales already developed. So they cite people who develop scales very much. It's papers that get a lot of citations. But it takes a lot of work to develop a scale. So I don't advise guys going that way. Just get a scale that's already done and put it in your study to measure the constructs you guys are truly wanting to measure there. So surveys are a combination of all those scales for all the constructs that you're trying to evaluate in your study. So this is true academic survey. You guys maybe are used to getting surveys when you are in the hotels or in your in a restaurant, and those satisfaction surveys, right? Oh, I like the food here. Oh, the stay was very nice. And you answer yes or no, or yeah, or I truly agree, or I don't agree. Those are Likert scales to measure. Those scales that I strongly disagree to strongly agree, with 5 points in the middle, like I somewhat disagree, I don't disagree or agree, or I somewhat agree and I strongly agree. Those are 5-point scales. That's usually how you measure those items. So you ask a question and then you ask the guy to strongly agree or strongly disagree in a 5 or 7-point scale. Those is what we call a Likert scale, okay, a Likert scale, to measure items in a construct scale. So it's not complicated, actually. It's just you trying to make it happen there and trying to get people to answer you in a more straightforward way about those items. But the beauty of scales to measure constructs, for instance, justice there, is that if I have an item, someone asking something, Pabri, let me see here. In scales, can we put a time period also, like 2000, I assume that 2010, 2020 survey? Yeah, and that's what we call, Pabri, we call that, I say your name correct, Prabit? That's what we call longitudinal study, from what I understand your question there. So, and this is something very awesome, something very publishable. If you do a longitudinal study, it takes time because you need to do a research or a survey at one time in time and then wait a period of time to do it again. But then you compare the results from both of them. So that is what we call a longitudinal study, not a cross-sectional study.
Yes, George, can we do in like this way? Because if a particular law has been enacted in 1995, so we have to check whether that law is effectively working in our country or not. So depending on the number of cases, number of victims reported, and whether their problem was solved through that law or not. So can we do like 1995 to 2020 and put different scales of measuring whether they have achieved justice through that law or not? Whether that law is able to serve its purpose for which it was made or not.
Sure. Again, the best way to do that is for you to do a study in the beginning at 95 and then to do a study again at 2010. That is the true longitudinal study. You get data at one point of time and then get data again at a second point of time. But if you're not doing that, it's not longitudinal. You're trying to get people to go back in their minds when they're answering the questionnaire, right? So try to go back to 1985 and remember how it was then. So that's what we call a projective technique, and that usually can lead to data that is not very trustworthy, because it's you asking people to go a long way back in time in their minds when they're answering the question right now. So it's better to get data at the right times, right?
Like for example, when the law was made, law is particularly made after analyzing the data by the parliament. So parliament analyze the data and then make a law. So we
Perfect.
have that data of 1995. What we need to get is the data of 2020 and from 2000 maybe 10 to 20. So we can check whether the data of 1995 and when law was made and this data of 2010 to 20. So we can
Perfect.
check the progress of the law.
Perfect. Perfect. That works perfectly. That is the true longitudinal study. That is it. You get data from that time and data again for another period, and then compare both of them. That is perfect. Whatever, and that may be kind of data you're talking about. It's not consumer or people answering surveys, but that data is what we call. I'll go there soon. Is what we call secondary data. It's data maybe from the system, maybe the number of prisons that went around then and then, maybe the number of fines that were given to people then and then. So that, or maybe the number of the amount of money that companies were paying for taxes there. So that's what we call secondary data, not surveys. Okay, I'll go there very soon, but that is actually my favorite kind of data. Secondary data, not survey. I do a lot more surveys than whatever else, because surveys are more practical in academic settings, because you get constructs, you get scales, you get students to go collect the data, and then you come back and have the data there already very organized for you to research. But secondary data is the best data.
So George, how to frame a question for a survey? For example, I want to check the spread of misinformation on the social media platforms. So how I will frame a question so that I can know whether users, while sharing the information, whether they are doing the fact analysis of that information or not, how this
Perfect.
misinformation is spread. So how to frame the questions for that survey?
Perfect
And
question.
how to know whether this segmentary is most important one in our project or this survey one?
Okay, so answering your question there. How do I go about asking about the things I want? So the things you want to ask about, the questions you want to ask about, they must be in a very academic manner here. They must be tied up with constructs that you already conceptually organize and got literature to back it off. Okay, so you need to understand those concepts well, and those concepts usually need to exist unless you're trying to propose a new one, which is also an awesome work, but it takes courage there to do that. But if you are trying to understand there how people are being misled in social media, or how they feel that news are fake or not, okay, so you need to get that construct from the literature. That is the first thing. So okay, so what is this? So it's consumer mistrust, or maybe fake news warning, whatever. A construct that there is already built up in the literature that measures whatever concept you're trying to get. Okay, so you get that, and if you get that, if you go around and try to find it and you get it, you can go after a scale that was already developed to measure it. So those are the questions you're going to use. Okay, so for instance here, I'll give you guys a sneak peek here at the end that was going to show you a paper of mine. I'm not using SPSS, I'm using another one here. I just misclicked here. So this is a paper of mine that I just sent to a periodical, actually called Business and Society, the periodical. But this paper here is about the adoption of the mandate of mask using during the COVID pandemic. Okay, so you guys can see here the little balls here. You guys see that? Okay, so this here again, the goal of this paper: analyze how people are respecting the law to use masks to avoid COVID spread. Okay, so this is what this paper is about. And what we have here is this construct here. It's called intention. Intention, again, is a very general thing. It's a thing that happens in many different settings, right? Respecting law is an intention. Okay, so you have the intention to respect that kind of law. So intention is valid for a lot of different scenarios. So the intention in this case here is the intention to use masks to avoid COVID spread. And we actually have another construct after intention, which is called actual use. It's the actual behavior. So intention drives behavior, but it's not the actual behavior itself. So we have a lot of in social psychology, we have a lot of connections here between intention and actual behavior, and this is a very strong relationship here. But you can actually also measure actual behavior. So you can measure intention and measure behavior. Okay, so these are our final, and this may be very useful. Those two concepts are very useful for a lot of things in law as well. So intention to respect some kind of mandate, respect some kind of law, and to actually respect it afterwards. So okay, you actually intend not to rob anything, but not robbing anything for real, maybe it's not the same as the intention of you not robbing anything. So maybe you're stealing something because I had a good chance, but you had the intention not to steal, but you are stealing. So this is the difference between intention and actual behavior. So those are two important concepts. Here in this paper is about, again, it's about you trying to understand mask use or respecting mask use mandates. Okay. And here we have attitude. Attitude is your feelings and your beliefs about something. So if you have we're talking here about quantitative research, right? So if you have, and people in law usually don't have, a positive attitude towards quantitative research, you look at this at the speech here today in a better manner than if you had a very bad attitude or a very negative attitude toward data and quantitative research. So that is attitude. Okay. So attitude here measures this kind of feelings and beliefs about something. In this case, about how to use masks and if masks are or not useful for anything. And here we have something that is totally tied up together with law, which is a construct we call subjective norms. You guys know that? Subjective norms. It's from a very important theory called the theory of plan and behavior in marketing and psychology. And subjective norms, it measures how people close to you and important to you influence your behavior and how their opinions are important to you. So I have my brother here, right? So if my brother thinks very strongly that I should never drive a motorcycle because motorcycles can kill you. They're very dangerous. You can truly fall off and be killed. And he loves me and he doesn't want me to drive a motorcycle. Okay. So that is him influencing my behavior. So if I am influenced by him, by this thought of him or my friends or my parents or people who are important to me, that is me changing my behavior because of what people around me think, about people important around me think. So those are subjective norms influencing me. So this is a construct in social sciences and in social psychology. This one here is perceived behavior control, is how much you think you are in control of a situation. And this here in the end is trust in authorities. How do I believe that the government and law enforcers can be trusted or not? If their intentions are truly in my best interest or not. So these are constructs again. These are ways to think about different phenomena. And to measure them, I have all those scales here. All those little squares here, they are scales. You see those? The constructs themselves are the balls, are the ellipses here. But the little squares here, they are the measures in the questionnaire. So to measure actual use, I have 3 questions. To measure intention, I have 3 questions. To have here continuing intention, which is to keep using masks in the future, even after the law goes away, it's here also 3 measures. So 3 measures for every construct here. So that is my nephew there, little Georgie. So if you get
Oi, Titinho.
Tudo bem, meus amigos? That's my little nephew there.
Onde você tá, na Gávea?
So na Gávea, but I'm here actually teaching to a lot of people about research, about quantitative research, which is awesome, right? It doesn't get English, but anyway. So those are our constructs, and these are me measuring those constructs with these different questions, items in a questionnaire. So for instance, the questionnaire that Daniel built with Christiani is this one here. Not this one here. This is your site. This one here. So this is the questionnaire that Christiani and Danielle built with a little bit of my help as well about end user license agreements and the rights of both parties and how these are presented to customers, right? So in terms of dispute resolution and law there. So this is a platform online called Qualtrics. Pookie has a contract with Qualtrics, so you can do a lot of surveys with Qualtrics for free. But there are other free ones like SurveyMonkey or like Google Forms to get good ways to build surveys using those different platforms. Qualtrics is paid, but you have other ones. I think Qualtrics actually is from Reuters. I think so. But anyway, what you have here is a questionnaire that you build. I can add questions here if I want. If I click this plus button here, I add another question here. And so you write it up, you write instructions for the questionnaire, then you do different scales here. Here is just a scale to measure whatever people are using in terms of software, then how much they use here. But the scales for real for the constructs are here. So you see here, this is one of the items for trust. So the item is, I believe that the service providers that I access online act according to what is best for me. So this is an item. This is an affirmative in a scale for trust. So you agree or disagree with that. The other one is here, for instance, the service providers I access online care about my interests and not just theirs. So these are questions measuring the nuances behind trust. So this is how you measure questions in surveys. You're getting good scales with all these nuances behind each construct. But again, Fabrit, you need to get those constructs well set up in your mind and well backed up by literature before anything, like I showed you guys here now. So, and whatever for this, and what I was going to show this at the end, but we already arrived at 1 hour, but I want to go further a little bit more, but I'll show you this now then. This model here, measuring use of masks here that I was talking before, I get that survey data, I put it here, and what I do here is just click this one button here, which said calculate estimates, and he will calculate all the effects that these arrows measure. And what is this effect here usually? These are the hypotheses of your study, right? Each arrow here represents an hypothesis of my study. So when you measure this, what do? I say that, okay, intention has an effect on actual use. So when you get that, you are getting that in a very general way for a lot of people, that intention affects actual use. Of course, your sample limits how much you can generalize the results, but if you see that effect happening, it means that, okay, this concept affects that concept, and that might drive behavior. So you're trying to understand how all these different concepts are affecting the other ones, okay? So that's what you're doing. And you do this again by just clicking here. And if I click here, I can see the results here. And if you guys can see it here in the estimates here, you guys can see that those numbers here, it's a little small for you guys, right? So what I have here, I can do something that I do in my classes. 1 second. This is the end result of my model already. With just one click, it's just like that. Let me just do something here. If I print screen this and I put this in Paint, I can get it bigger. It's better now. So you see here, this is, let me put a square here. So this is the impact of subjective norms on attitude. Okay, I'm measuring this relationship here, subjective norms affecting attitude. And then what you have here is the measure, the how big the impact is, the estimate for it. But the most important thing here is the p-value here. This is where you test if this effect exists or not. So this is something of statistics that you guys don't know, of course, but is if you learn what I teach in my statistics class, if you learn how to read p-values, you change your life in terms of how you read results, because you can read anything in any paper. You just need to understand that little concept of how to understand how to read p-values, because p-values are what give you the results of hypothesis testing, which is very common in a lot of quantitative research. And when I kid with my students about it, I say the following thing. When you see a p-value, if it's very small, small again is below 5%. So this is 1%, right? It's below 5%. If it's very small, you reject the new hypothesis, the main hypothesis. So if it's very small, it means that p-value is the support for the hypothesis. If I support you very little, it means I don't support you, right? So I reject you. So here, and actually, and you see here, this is the effect of subjective norms and attitude, and the p-value is very small. So I reject the new hypothesis. But the new hypothesis is not this. The new hypothesis here for all these tests here is that this effect is equal to 0. So the hypothesis is, okay, the hypothesis, there is no effect. The effect is equal to 0. So if I reject it, it means there is an effect, a significant effect. Okay, so that's the most common hypothesis in the world. So if you see a p-value in front of you and you want to think about it, you see, okay, the hypothesis is this is equal to 0. This doesn't exist. So if I reject that, it means it exists. So that's the main hypothesis that you see in a lot of studies. So checking existence or not of something. So if it's below 5%, you have the effect happening. If it's not, you don't have it happening. Actually here, for all the p-values here in this study, all hypotheses were checked out. All of them were checked out. All of them are below 5. This one is at 5, but anyway, all of them are below 5. So all the effects that we propose, they are checked out. When you have this asterisks here, it means that the p-value was below 0.0001, so 0.0001, so very low. So a lot of strong support there for the hypothesis. But again, this is the main thing. When you get this, you just discuss those hypotheses and how do you think why this affects that or not, and this is it. That's the study, okay? And you get all the analysis very quick there. But again, this was an example that I was going to show you guys in the end. But I'll go back here and just talk about a little bit more about different kinds of data and then about different analysis. 1 second. So those are surveys, getting constructs and scales. And then you have what I'm not that good in experimental design, but experimental design is amazing. It's the golden standard for checking causality, the link between this and something else. And to get a very clear way there to understand experimental design, which I think could be very amazing for law if you get the structure and the resources to use it, is you understanding experimental design, where it came about, where it was in science, in medicine, in biology. And you guys just went through, maybe in your countries, or maybe you saw it around the world, maybe we just went through a very big phase of experimental design data collection in the COVID vaccine testing. So that is experimental design at its core. It can also be done for social sciences, but for biological sciences, experimental design is me giving Daniel and maybe 1,000 more like him a placebo, and then me giving Elisaveta 5 grams of whatever active principle I want for my COVID vaccine, and then me giving Pabrid 10 milligrams. And then I have 3 groups, right, that I control, and big groups with 1,000 people, or maybe tens of thousands of people in each group. One of the placebo, one of 5 milligrams, other one of 10 milligrams. And that is me trying to understand, and maybe I control even other variables that are like race or like sex and like weight and like previous diseases, and like, so I can control a lot of different variables. And I expose each different group to different treatments we call. So no treatment, like the control group, Daniel, Elizabeth 5 grams, and Pabrit 10 grams. And then I see the results of a variable of interest in the end. For instance, maybe days that the people were, or maybe the quantity of antibodies that each body built for COVID. Any question, Pabrit?
Can we divide it on the basis of like 60 above, 45 to 60, and 18 above?
Yeah, sure.
Like,
sure.
yes,
Yeah.
on the age wise, and even on the see the effect of COVID vaccine or something on the basis of male, female, or like this. We can do that.
Yeah, all those are conditions in what we call a factorial design in experimental research. You try to get all those variables like age, like sex, gender, whatever else, and try to understand how they would impact your results and try to put them inside your experiment and try to control them. So inside the experiment. So that certain group will have that certain characteristics, that other group will have the other characteristics. So you control that and get a lot of good data there.
Can we also do it in the form of a law, like particularly law which is followed by young generations? The people who are following it are the elder one, like, or maybe on the basis of sex, like road driving skills. Who are following road driving skills? Is it the male or the female?
Perfect. You can do that easy. Just again, you just need to devise a way. And this is experimental design, again, is the golden standard for you getting causality checked out. So it's very important. That's why it's published a lot in journals in business. If you get a good experiment trying to understand social behavior in a way, you truly, go ahead.
George, can we do in this way also? Like we can check how the justice delivery system works in a federal government, how it works in a unitary government, where courts are more active, whether unitary form of government or federal form of government.
Sure.
Like during the pandemic, how the courts have been working in justice delivery system. Is it in the unitary governments or it was in the federal governments?
Yeah, the thing is, you need some data from those groups, right? So it's not just one entity and another entity. If you do that, that's a case study. So experimental design, you need to devise groups which will be exposed to different treatments with different variables controlling them, like different kinds of government there or different kinds of law there. It can, those all can be.
Yes, we can divide like lower courts, supreme courts, high courts, divide the courts as well.
Sure,
Groups.
but again, Supreme Courts, you should at least use different countries. It should be comparative law, right? It should be you should be comparing maybe 30 or 40 different countries, and and maybe control there by if they are European or first world, third world, or developing countries. Maybe control with those variables, Supreme Courts react or not, or act or not. Perfect.
Maybe the time of government they have, whether parliamentary government or whether presidential government.
Yeah, perfect. That's pure experimental design. That's awesome. That's it. You got it. And again, this is very, very, very important, very powerful if you can do it well. This is why it is a golden standard for medicine, for biology. So, and also we try to apply this also for social sciences in marketing, against to understand consumer behavior. Like how, if I change the settings inside a store, how that will affect people. So I get maybe one full day in my store with very low light and a very, very powerful music in the store and no scents at all. And maybe the shelves are located in very narrow corridors. So that's one setting of the store. Next day is a very bright store with very fruity scent and no music at all. Other day we have classical music with all the shelves backed up to the walls, and so a very open center in the store, and maybe a table in the center of the store to help people test products out. So I test different layouts in the store, and I see all those qualities, the lighting, the music, the scent, the organization of the store, and how they affect purchase at the end. So my variable of interest there is how much people will purchase, how more people will purchase or not. So in the end, I measure that. But all those other things, I'm checking out and see if they affect that interest variable, which is what we call our dependent variable. And that's important in quantitative research, right? Whenever you do quantitative research, you need to truly understand what is your main dependent variable. And your main dependent variable is your research question, usually, which is the main thing you want to answer about, to ask about. So in my instance there, in my paper I showed there about mask use, it was there that my main dependent variable was intention to use masks and actual use of masks. Those two were the main dependent variables. So that's what I was wanting to see, to measure, to understand how people were using masks or not. All the rest that came before were things that were affecting that. But my dependent variables were those two there. So those dependent variables are your research question usually. And whatever comes before are things that affect or not, or the guide behavior toward that or not. And what I talked about before, the data that I love most actually, also surveys and experiments are amazing, but secondary data for me, and again, I'm biased because I came from SAS. I worked at SAS, this big software company that works with that, is secondary data. And secondary data is amazing because it's not data you collect. So because it's not data you collect in terms of being researching and actively collecting it, which is primary data. So you're building experience and measuring things, or you're building surveys and measuring things. Secondary data exists in the world and you get it. And what is the advantage of secondary data existing? Usually for the law, for instance, maybe in court registers or in government registries, you have data there, stuff that actually happened. Okay, so this many people were arrested and this many people were arrested again after 10 years. So you get that data. That is not someone answering you or telling you, okay, I think people got arrested then, and then I think people came back. So that is an opinion of someone in a survey. Okay, that is different than you getting hard data, which is secondary data. It's data that of things that actually did happen. For our consumer research, what I do usually, this data is how people interact with brands, how people interact with companies. So they are actually purchasing that. They're actually going to websites and they're actually browsing around that kind of product. So they're actually talking about you in social media. They're actually answering, sending you emails. So they're actually they're actually using your app in the phone. So how many times and to purchase what and to do what? All that is not someone telling, okay, I think I use the application for the phone every now and then, and maybe I purchased that or that. That is a survey. So surveys are not that trustworthy because, again, they are recollections of people trying to answer something, or opinions of people trying to answer something you ask in a survey, which is different than this. Secondary data is things people actually did. It's stored in business or in governmental databases. So this is data in a very big quantity, with a lot of data, usually stored up from the years in big mainframes usually. And what you have there is true behavior, is what truly happened. And if you get access to this data, you have a golden mine there for quantitative research. You have a lot. If you have a good friend in a government with a lot of this kind of data, or in a big data institute, or in big companies, that's when I usually struck gold there, is when I usually have a student that I advise that has a big contact with a company, like I had this one just now, having a big contact with the supermarket chain here in Rio. So we have people with access to that data, and they can give you that data. You can analyze it and do a lot with it. And again, it's very trustworthy because it's actual behavior. It's what truly happened. It's not opinions. It's not people answering things. It's what truly happened. Data that reflects reality for real. Okay, so if you get this data, amazing. Like, go for it. Do not ignore it. And talk to me, and we'll do something about law. I'll help you with the statistics. So don't worry about the statistics. Just let's do something with it, because it's truly valuable. It's truly valuable. So when you go for that, usually you get a lot of data. When you get a lot of data, you can truly go for other kinds of analysis methods, which usually involve data mining and machine learning. So you can do a lot more with this volume of data. When you go surveys, you go 200, 400, 500 data points. When you do experiments, also around that, maybe 200, 300. But when you go for secondary data, you can get billions of data points, billions of observations, billions. I worked with billions already in a telecom company, billions. Okay, so that is something else that truly gives you a big picture. Yeah. And this is going nuts nowadays with what we call big data. And big data is secondary data that is in a bigger volume and less structured, because in the past, secondary data was more about transactional data from companies. But nowadays with big data, we have a lot of data from browsing habits and from digital interactions. So that is big data, what we call big data nowadays. So it comes very fast and it's very, very profound in terms of volume. But again, this is, for my opinion in particular, this is the best kind of data you can get. It's secondary data. So it's the most trustworthy one. But you need access to governmental institutions or to companies there to get access to that data. It's not something you measure, it's something you get. Some company, somebody measures it for you. So to finish it up, let's talk about modeling techniques. And in terms of modeling techniques, we have two important fields there to analyze data. We have statistics, first, classical statistics. And I'm not teaching you guys statistics here today, so don't worry about it. Just talking about it in general ways, right? In general terms. So statistics here, they have two main important fields in statistics that you need to be aware about. So one of them is descriptive statistics. And with descriptive statistics, what I do is I describe my data. I get a better look at my data, at the data I have in front of me, of the survey I did or the secondary data I got. So I get that data and I describe it better. I have a better view of what's happening in that sample that I got. So that's good. That can truly inspire you to understand or to think about many things. But you need to do a truly generalizable research, you need to do the next step, which is inferential statistics. So for those who never heard about it, inferential statistics is you trying to make the leap from the sample to the population. That's what you're trying to do. I'm trying to understand how the whole population is behaving based on a small sample. So you don't have the whole population, because having a census, having everyone is truly not cost effective. It takes a lot of money, a lot of time, it's impossible. So you'll never have the population as a whole in your hand. But based on a sample, you can try to infer how that population behaves, or your kind of research question, how that happens in the whole population. That's when you do inferential statistics, which is usually hypothesis testing or modeling in terms of analysis of variance or regressions or whatever.
George, for the inferential statistics, we have to keep the sample as heterogeneous or homogeneous. I think heterogeneous would help.
No, the best sample you can get, Prabir, is a sample that is representative. Okay, so if your population is heterogeneous, the sample should also be heterogeneous because it should reflect that population. So, but if the population is very homogeneous, it's better to have a homogeneous sample as well. Yeah. So it depends on the population. It should be representative. That's the main goal here, the main thing. But even when you're trying to test theory and not truly worry about different variables that might influence that, maybe homogeneous samples are better for small little tests to understand if something affects something, maybe not in a general way now, but at least in this little point here. So having a homogeneous sample can help you filter out outside influences on that effect that might happen if you had a very heterogeneous sample. You're not measuring for that. What you do in experiments is trying to control all that. So you try to control in experiments all those extra variables that might affect the results or not. Okay, so that's why experiments are so amazing.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. But again, statistics, you can do it using software again, and usually you will do hypothesis testing, confidence intervals, and classical statistics modeling techniques like regression and analysis of variance. That's very useful for experiments. But statistics has limitations usually. The limitations are usually some assumptions it has for modeling. So for the data you're using, those assumptions kind of limit what you can use or not. So you need to be aware of those assumptions, because if you forego them, you kind of have not very trustworthy results. So statistics are they are very powerful, but they are limited in this way about assumptions of the data, of the nature of the data. Okay. But they are insanely amazing, and you usually doing hypothesis testing and confidence intervals there. And the other thing you have, which came about with the rise of computers and the powerful machines you do have now, is what we call machine learning. So machine learning usually is done with much more data. So you need more data, because machine learning is exactly like you teaching a dog to sit. Okay, so that is machine. It's like my brother here teaching my nephew how to do something, how to play soccer in the video game. Okay, so when you're trying to teach this, in this case, not my nephew and not the dog, in this case, the computer, you're giving them example after example. And for us here with data, those examples are each data point, each observation. So in a table, each observation is composed of a lot of different columns, right? Those columns are the variables you measure for each observation. And maybe for you guys, each observation, each data point equals to a country in comparative law, or equals to a client in we're dealing with client, equals to a criminal when we're dealing with criminals. I don't know, equals to yours, right? So those are, each line in your table equals to one of those units of interest of yours in your research. So what you do here is, in machine learning, you show a lot of different data points, observations for the model. And the model, like the dog, it will sniff out patterns there. Because, for instance, you get a dog, like you're trying to train a dog to smell for drugs in airports, okay? So what do? You show him a suitcase with cocaine, and if the dog recognizes cocaine there, you give him a reward, right? If he doesn't, you scold him, I don't know. And then you show another suitcase without any drugs. The drugs doesn't do anything. Okay, so he's learning what cocaine or what drugs smell like. So you're trying to teach him with examples, showing him a lot of different suitcases, which one of those have drugs, which one of those don't have drugs. And you kind of reinforce that behavior in the dot. So what you're doing here is the same, but with the computer. And instead of rewarding him with cookies or with whatever food, you're rewarding the algorithm with less error. You're giving him less error or better results in the end. So he's learning that it's getting better because it's making less mistakes. So he can understand that with programming. So you're showing a lot of examples and trying to get the algorithm to learn which of those variables influence the outcome that you want to analyze. So that's what you do in machine learning. And one of the main ways that we do this, one of the most famous methods, is what we call here neural networks. And neural networks, they're famous because they're very powerful in terms of nonlinear analysis of problems, but they are famous because they truly remind us of our brain, right? How our neural pathways in our brain work. And it's kind of a simulation of an artificial neuron there in neural networks. So how those many connections between a neuron and other neurons can affect you to understand or to help you understand some kind of situation. That's what happens behind the neural networks. And all those stored information there, they are stored through the analysis and through the weighting of errors inside the network. So that's where you store information, is in changing the weights and changing the errors inside the network by each example you show. So it's something amazing, machine learning, and it's what is behind actually artificial intelligence now. So artificial intelligence has machine learning in the background. And from what I see, maybe lawyers will have a very difficult time competing with artificial intelligence in the near future, because artificial intelligence with this kind of learning, it's something that can give you answers that only the most amazing and studied lawyer in the world could. Because probably these kind of models, they will sit on top of a lot of data from cases all over the world. And there's no way a human lawyer could read all those cases. And they will know all the results of all those cases. They will cross-reference it with all similar cases. And they just give you, okay, these are the main points you should argue about in defending this kind of law here, or this kind of case here, because I have it all here in my database and I analyze all the cases about it. So I have everything here and I can compare everything in an instant for you and give you exactly what happens when this happens or that happened and what is the best course of action.
But like in the cases of subjective element, because most of the cases also depends on the different judges how they are deciding, and the case laws which the advocates are putting towards the judges, like the precedents. So in case of subjective element is there, like I've seen recent times a lot of artificial intelligence softwares have been used to control the social media platforms by different governments so that they can stop the spreading of misinformation. Now it also depends like how people are writing in on the social media platforms, because some people may mean some language as a different one and there are different interpretations, but artificial intelligence doesn't use that subjective element, and it just clearly prohibit those texts which it thinks is a kind of hate speech or is it something kind of fake news or misinformation, and they're not allowing the subjective element to come into picture. So I think there is somewhere the machine learning may have some effects on justice delivery system as well.
Perfect. Yeah. And again, Pabrit, one thing that does change with the future is that this is getting better. Okay. So being subjective or talking about a particular problem, of course, in law, that is everything, right? Everything is different. And even the same law can have a lot of different interpretations for every kind of case, right? But the idea here with this quantitative thing is you truly understanding all those particularities of a lot of different cases. And of course, a particular case can be very singular, very, very particular, but that might not very constantly be true, because there might be a lot of cases in the world that are similar to that one, that are very similar to that one, if you have a lot of data, right?
Like George, I'll say one example. Like India, people there are courts and courts have different benches. So, for example, if there's a case of maybe drugs or something like that, where the court gives you a bail, a kind of like
Okay,
you will be released, but on certain conditions.
sure.
So most of the people apply to those judges who are very lenient, and in the most of the cases they give you certain kind of relief. So likewise, I've seen now the companies are developing softwares to analyze that a client should apply to which judge from where they can get a relief, and they are analyzing the data, all the judgments given by that a particular judge, and through the analyzing of the data they will apply their case to a particular judge who is giving more relief. So like it's
Perfect.
amazing. Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
perfect. That's it. That's so. Pabrit just gave here the perfect example of how machine learning can be very well used for law and for winning cases. Like
Yes.
maybe that variable in particular, choosing the right judge, is the key. So if you can analyze all the data from the cases from that judge, from many different judges, and choose the judges that are the best, wow, amazing. Amazing. It's like what it's not machine learning, but they also use machine learning. You guys watch that series called Boo? You guys watched it? Boo. It's a series about it's not about a lawyer. It's about the American series called Boo. It's not about Carlos Alberto watched it. This is a good series. It's not about the lawyers, but it's about a consultant that helps lawyers. And this consultant is a master. It's a psychology PhD there, and he's a master at understanding and choosing juries. That's what he does. He chooses juries. So you get to, in the U.S. system, I think you get to choose the juries, right? So the lawyers can ask for, I want that guy to go away, I want that guy to stay here in the jury. So you get a big pool of possible jurors in the beginning, and then you choose whatever jurors, or both lawyers, the defendant and the prosecutor, they have ways, or they have how many attempts there to try to block or try to accept those jurors. So in the end, you get a jury formed by, you have any influence in how the jury is formed. I don't think in Brazil that's the same, but in the USA you do that like that. At least they showed that in the series.
What's the name of the series? Pool.
Boo, like bull, the bull. It's like bullshit without the shit. So just bull. So what he does is, this guy, it's like what Pabrit said about the judges, but not about the judge here, about the jury. He tries to read, or psychologically read, the jury and see which of the jurors would be better to be there to help his client. So I think this guy, because of his background, all the data I have about him, this guy would be awesome, because he did what in social media, he had this kind of family, he had this kind of profession, he behaved in that regard. So this guy is a good juror. So this guy is the expert at building juries based on a lot of data. It's not usually machine learning, actually, but it's a lot of data come together, analyzed by his staff there, by his team, and then he chooses the jurors with the help of them. So it's an amazing series. I liked it. But anyway, the idea here again is you getting a lot of data and trying to analyze those patterns and see what can help you understand some kind of phenomenon or not. Okay, so this is where machine learning comes about.
George, which softwares can we use for machine learning, and we can put
that's a good question. I have it here, this one here. Let me show you here. It's called Weka. This is a free software, a very cheap, which is zero cost. A free software from this university in New Zealand. It's not a good software to use in enterprises because it doesn't truly handle a lot of data well, but it's an amazing software for small data, for small quantities of data, and for not putting inside an enterprise setting. So for academic purposes, the Weka is amazing. I can show you Weka here now, but I'll give you guys here in the chat, if I can find the chat again. I lose the chat here. It's happening before. Here, it's Weka here. So this software, there's a lot of tutorial videos on how to use Weka in YouTube, and I also have a book about it. But you can just download it and use it, and it's this thing here. Let me show you guys. This is the little bird from New Zealand. I actually was there, very close to Waikato, last year before the pandemic hit. I went to New Zealand and to Australia. It was my last trip before a long time, I guess. A nice trip, but and if you guys go to New Zealand, don't forget to go to the Shire. The Lord of the Rings setting is amazing there. I just had a wonderful time there. But anyway, when you go here in Weka, I can try to show you guys an example here. So this is where you choose. You guys can see this. Maybe it's too small for you guys. Let me just find some data here. I didn't prepare it before, but since you asked. Adding documents. Okay, this is better. Just trying to find. Because I need correct data. Okay, this guy has data here, I see. Yeah. Okay, so this, I loaded some data here, and then you see here the graphs. So these are variables. This problem in particular for this student here, he was trying to analyze the student evasion in private universities. So how students were going away or quitting their courses in the middle of the course. So the idea here, it is for CRM, is for you to try to retain customers. So you understand what patterns of behavior drive people from canceling their subscriptions in universities, and then you try to influence them in ways to try to keep them in the company as a customer in the university, so you don't lose that people paying you, those students paying you their fees, right? So you are trying to, this is CRM done for university settings. So you're trying to understand that kind of behavior, how people are choosing to quit universities or not. So for here, I will use other variables, see what happens. And just I'll choose one modeling technique. So you come here in this classify thing here in the second. For the first one, it's pre-process. You choose the table, you choose the data. So you need to already have the data done here, ready here. So I choose those data here. And then I go here to classify. And I will classify this variable called status. Status is my dependent variable. Is the variable that tells me if the student quit or if it didn't quit the university, okay? So this variable is a 0-1 variable, 0-1. The guy quit or the guy didn't quit. So this is my target variable, my dependent variable. The answer, my problem is defined here. So I have this variable here, and then I'll choose a model, like I'll choose a tree, which is a very visual model. A tree, a decision tree that will try to get all those variables, all that information I have from each student there in the table, and try to analyze which of those variables drive this behavior more, behavior of quitting the university more. So I'm trying to divide everyone in two groups, quit or not quitter from the university, and analyze which of the variables are in the database are more influencing towards that kind of behavior. So again, I have the data, I have the dependent variable here, and then I just choose a model and I press start. And that's it. I have a model with a precision of 85% of correct classifications of understanding who quit or didn't quit, 85%. And these are just performance evaluations of the model, but I'll show you guys here the tree itself. So this is the tree. This is the tree, okay? So you guys might not see that because it might be very small, but I'll give you guys a run here. So this is all the decisions the model made to try to see if the guy evaded the school or not. So those are a lot of variables, so it's very hard to see here, but I should do an easier model. But anyway, the most important variable here to understand if a person quit or not the school is, and maybe my brother knows that because he worked a lot for private schools here in Rio, for Ibemaki and now for Cândido Mendes in law courses. And maybe he had a problem with people leaving the course, right? People abandoning the course, the middle, and losing the revenue from that. But the thing here, the most important thing here is if people are receiving discounts when they enter the university. So, okay, you start the course here now and you get a 30% discount. So if the person had discounts, the discount rate was above 0. So if you give initial discounts to students, maybe they are more likely to leave. So if you don't give initial discounts, maybe they won't suffer when they receive those discounts end up in the end of the first year. So they will stay in the university. So this is the most important variable. The second most important variable is their average grade in the second semester of the first year, the second semester of the first year. If they are above 4.26 in a scale of 10, maybe they won't leave a lot. But if they got a discount in the entrance of the university and they have a very bad average grade, they are more likely to leave the university than not. Okay, so what you're understanding here is you are seeing a lot of different rules that will give you guys in the end bigger chances of evading, of going away from university, or staying in university and concluding their courses. So you understand a lot of behavior here by doing that. And more than anything, you can use this model to see, okay, I have this student here now, I don't know what he will do in the future. Please, model, tell me, will he leave or not? And the model, like the dog, he will sniff the student there, the customer here, and he'll see, okay, this guy will leave, this guy is leaving. Because I see all the combinations of all the different variables here, and this guy shows a clear pattern towards leaving. So what do you do if that guy is a good student, or if it's an important student for you, or if it's a valuable customer for you? You try to retain him. That's what we do in CRM. So if you know that someone will leave before even themselves think about leaving, that's what it does here. You get a pattern that will show you all the signs that something is going to happen, it's very likely to happen. So you can act beforehand trying to prevent that. That's the amazing thing here. So maybe with law data here, or for criminal data here, I can get a lot of data that might be related to committing crimes or not, and I can predict people committing crimes. So this is minority reports done without predicting the future, actually, with us using data. You're trying to remember that the movie with Tom Cruise that was predicting people committing crimes with, but they were using psychics, right? People who were looking at the future. This is us doing that with just hard data and with data from people, okay? So guys, this is a little example about machine learning. So machine learning is this, in the end. You see, I can build a neural network for you guys here right now, very easily, very fast as well, just choosing here, the model choose. If I choose here, I get functions here, and I get multi-layer perceptron here. So this is me building a neural network. That's it. You just choose there and just press start here. He'll do the model for neural networks. So that easy. Again, modeling itself, I don't even need to know whatever mathematics is behind this. It doesn't matter. It just matters that you understand what you're doing and using the correct data, and then understand how to evaluate the results. That's the important thing, because the results will be here, and you need to understand how those results can be evaluated for you guys to see if it's a good model or a bad model, if it can be trusted or not. So that is what happens behind you analyzing data, is not worrying about how to calculate anything because the software does it for you, but you need to understand how to read outputs, how to understand the results, and then use that in your research to derive conclusions and to build a nice discussion about it, about usually a big picture of a lot of people, a lot of countries in comparative law, a lot of criminals in criminal law or whatever. But whatever units of research you have, you can have a lot of data about it, and you can try to understand the phenomena in a much more generalizable way than you can with just analyzing one or two cases with qualitative research. So I hope I did help you guys get a little bit more intimate and more excited about quantitative research.
Yes. Yes.
And
George,
go ahead.
George, yes. For experimental design and for like segmentary data, the same software can be used, this one?
Yeah, for experimental design, usually you just go here for SPSS or for SAS or for Minitab. You can even do it in Excel, because experimental design itself, the biggest challenge is you designing the experiment and controlling the variables in the measurement. So that's the biggest challenge. The statisticals about it is just you going here in SPSS and doing what we call ANOVA, which is analysis of variance. Analysis of variance is a technique here in comparison here. So here, ANOVA here. When you do ANOVA is a statistical hypothesis test, where you test if the mean of something that is of interest to you is the same across all different treatments, across all different groups. So you are just comparing. Usually it's very simple in terms of experiments. It's very simple for you to do analysis for experiments. It's just ANOVAs and variations of ANOVAs. You're trying to compare those means.
Can you write in chat box, George?
Okay.
Thank you, George.
No problem. But again, very simple analysis of variance. Again, it's you comparing means across different groups. That's what ANOVA does. Compare means across different groups. It's very simple, actually, the analysis of experiments in terms of statistics. You don't need to use crazy models like this one I use here. This one here is what we call a structural equation model, because it has a lot of different variables that are dependent and then independent afterwards. So this attitude here is predicted by subjective norms and PBC, but then it becomes independent variable of intention. So you have indirect effects here from this guy and this guy and that guy and that guy. So this is like a hierarchical model with different layers, okay? Carlos, you have a question? You have a hand raised there.
Yeah, I do. Thank you. I think it's more directed to Daniel, because it's more on the legal side of data usage. I was thinking about like the recent developments in data protection. We have here in Brazil the LGPD, and we have the GDPR in Europe, for example. And I was thinking more about how does local businesses use the data collected from their customers. And for example, you've mentioned that you've been using secondary data from supermarkets. And I was thinking whether or not you could actually use those data in your paper for other commercial purposes, let's say, without it being a breach of their privacy. I don't know if it's an issue or not.
I can answer that. Sure, it's an important issue. Privacy and data usage can be used in very bad ways by companies, right? And to truly invade into the lives of people, the lives of customers. But in my case, for instance, in the supermarket data, I don't care about customers. So I don't have any kind of information about customers. I just have aggregate data about how people in general are purchasing. So I can be customer 1, customer 2, customer 3. I don't care if it's Carlos, Daniel, or Elisaveta. It doesn't matter for me. It's just different customers there. Of course, Elisaveta has there her age, her sex, her whatever she purchased. So that's just a number for me, just number 23. Okay, so you are number 11. Okay, but I don't know who the person is, so I'm not invading to anyone there using that kind of data, right? But privacy
wouldn't this fact already constitute a breach of privacy? That's what I mean. It doesn't matter for me from a legal standpoint if you care about it or not. The fact that you already has it it could be a breach of privacy for me. I don't know. I'm just supposing.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not using your data in particular. I don't know who you are there, but I did get your data. For company got your data, and it's using it for its purposes, right? And I'm not sure legally if that is or not anything, but in terms of morally, I don't think so. But again, my view is biased because I'm from this field, right? So anyway, I don't think so, because when you engage into any kind of relationship with anyone, even with people, even more with businesses, you are generating tons of data by default, okay? You are generating tons of data by default because they are registering every operational transaction or interaction you have with them. So if they are doing well, they are registering it in somewhere in the database. So if they are registering it, they could do nothing with it and just leave it there. Okay, so just leave it there, because I need to register it, because maybe you come here complaining about something in the future. I need to show you something, but I'm not using it for anything else. So they're not breaching your privacy in any way. Okay, but if I do that, I don't get the chance to become intimate with you. I don't get the chance to know you. And not getting the chance to know you, which for you might be a privacy breach, because the guy's trying to get close to me and don't want it, but you kind of want it because you are doing business with the company. So you are interacting with them because you want something from them. So in terms of CRM, which is something that I truly preach about, you should be glad that companies are using in the correct manner. Of course, many will use it in wrong manners, right? But in abusive manners. But if they're using it correctly, they are using it for your benefit, They're using it to know you better, to offer you better deals, and to talk to you in a more intimate way. So that will all generate more trust. If they use it well, it will generate more trust from you towards the company. And with that, you will even open more and give them more data because you want it better, you want it more. It's like you with your girlfriend. When you meet a girl at first, you don't know her well, right? So you don't tell her everything. So all the truth about you, but she'll get to know you during time. And the more she knows you, the better your relationship will be because she knows everything you like or not. So then that will become, that's you guys becoming more intimate. And of course, that is her going into your privacy. That is her looking at private things from you. But that's the only way she can learn more from you. So again, of course, that can be abusive. It can be used in wrong ways. It can be even scary sometimes. But if that data is used in a way that will benefit the customer in the end, that is something that is valuable for the customer and for the company as well, but for the customer in particular. Okay.
Carlos, it depends on your approach. Of course, you can discuss it. It is in some ways a privacy breach, of course. So it's a gray line here. We are in a gray area, really gray area here when we talking about privacy. I learned from my brother. There's a famous case in, I think the store was Target in the U.S. And there was a girl that went there to purchase supplies for pregnant people, and she didn't tell she was pregnant for her parents or anyone. She was hiding that, and suddenly she received at her home a letter. As you bought this product, you should look for this one, like pregnant women products. And her parents opened the letter and discovered that she was actually pregnant. So sometimes, of course, it can a breach of privacy, but usually you authorize, like what he's talking about here is your consumer behavior, not your personal behavior. So that's why he's saying it's not a privacy issue, and I really don't think it is. And it's not your personal behavior. It's, of course, it is, but it's your consumer, what you're buying there and how you're buying it. That's what they study, and that's the data mainly they collect. Your personal data you have to authorize to be spread around. So it's kind of different.
Thank you.
It can get scarier, Carlos, when you go about big data, because with big data, sometimes companies are collecting some shady data from you. Like a lot of companies put cookies in your machine in web browsers, and those cookies, those data mining cookies, we call them, they are doing a lot more than just analyzing what you do in their site. Because some of those cookies, they do what we call data stream collection or click stream collection. What they're doing is they're looking at what you're doing in the site, but also what you're doing in the next site you visit that's not about the company, and whatever next site you visit. So I'm looking at your history navigating online, not just on my site, on other sites. So that is scary. That is something extra there. And of course, I can learn a lot about you if I do that.
So George, we should not, when there's a disclaimer saying whether you accept all cookies or you don't accept, so we should always say we don't accept cookies.
Yeah, Pabri, that's my main point when people in my CRM classes talk about privacy. And I say the following thing for them: privacy and all your concerns about it end exactly at the moment where you want to use a service or buy a product. Because when you want that, you just agree, okay, I want to use this email service. I agree. I want that. I want to read that news. I want to get that product. So when you go like crazy agreeing with everything, because you want that, they offer something of value to you, you want that. So all your privacy concerns go all the way. And you just use it and you just agree with it. But if you do agree with it, yeah, you are probably, and if the company is not that trustworthy, even worse, because they might put some crazy cookies, and they're not trying to infect you with viruses or anything. They're just trying to get a lot of data. There isn't a friend of Daniel here in Brazil. He works with internet marketing, digital marketing, and he talks about people like, okay, so I have this huge database of cooked people people he cooked. He put cookies inside, and he sells that. He sells his cookie base to other companies to target better advertisements and to sell better for them because he has that data. So that cookie base, that all the people he cooked before, he managed to put a cookie inside, that is an asset to him, and he sells that to companies who want to affect those customers. So yeah, that information is very important. But again, all those concerns end when you want to use a service. So you just press yes, 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 I agree with everything. And as Daniel said, after you agree, right? So I don't think you can sue them if you agree. I'm not sure in the legal terms there. But again, guys, this was it. I'm sorry it took 2 hours instead of just 1. But this was the idea. I can come back in the future if you guys have any more questions. It was a pleasure being with you all here. And if you guys truly want to engage with quantitative research, and if you need a little push, a little help from me, it will be a pleasure to help you guys, at least to point out how to do surveys or which software to use to analyze data, and also to help you guys actually analyze data. We can meet up in particular or in private for 1-2 hours, and I'll show you a little bit of the steps you need to do it. Okay, it's a pleasure to be in contact with you all.
Your email ID.
Okay, I'll give you guys here.
Thanks for being here. I really learned today. Elisaveta, please, some words to my brother. I'm biased here, so.
I think since this moment I'm biased too. Thank you so much. The lecture was very useful and very informative. It is another approach for research making, of course, but now especially for researchers who are planning to publish and who are publishing in hiring journals, this approach is very, very useful. So thank you again so much that you give us the opportunity to know this new information. Thank you.
I appreciate it so much. Thank you so much. The chance.
Thank you, George. And we want one more lecture from you on how to use different software for different data analysis.
With pleasure. I can show you some good examples for different analysis I made already. It will be a pleasure. It's easy. But again, I applaud you all in law for being interested in quantitative research. It's not and I think it's something that maybe for you guys in law, it's a true game changer and a true differentiation for you guys. I'm not sure if your journals are accepting of this or not, of these new methodologies, but it's something when I watch my brother's PhD thesis in law, one of the things that truly scared me was the lack of methodology, the lack of clear methodology, because in business, because we're dealing with social sciences here, it's truly hard to measure social phenomena, truly hard. And not only in quantitative, but also in qualitative ways, but to truly try to get it together and to analyze something in a scientific way, right? In social measures, in social experiments. So business has a lot, and I think we are very advanced in business in terms of trying to truly devise very rigid methodology to very trustworthy methodology to analyze different phenomena, be it qualitative, be it quantitative, but we're truly well together there in putting things in the right way to try to apply scientific method to social sciences. And we are very, very proud of that. Even our PhD actually in business here at PUC, my PhD is like, the one we teach is, maybe we have, I don't know, 15 classes in the whole PhD course. And of those 15 classes, 10 of those are methodological classes. So the core of our PhD course is teaching methodology. Not just teaching marketing or finance or organization. I'm teaching you methodology, how to research better, how to be a better researcher, and to be exposed to all those different methodologies. And from what I might be totally wrong, but from what I get from the law work I saw, it's much more free flowing. It's less structured. So, and maybe that helps you guys get more free insight, but in business, at least, we see it like lacking impact, lacking true contributions to theory, which is something worry about. So having more organized methodology will help everyone, I think, every field. So maybe this one here is something that can inspire you guys, but also using qualitative methodology, but being well done and following the correct steps that are suggested to get to good results is something that everyone should be worried about, whatever methodology you use, but use good methodology. So I hope quantitative methodology can help you guys differentiate yourselves. And for me in particular, I can tell you guys that by personal experience, in marketing, we have a lot of qualitative researchers. So my profile in marketing, at least here in Brazil, it's not that common. There are more like me, but it's not that common. We have more qualitative researchers than quantitative researchers in marketing. Not many engineers like myself go into marketing. So I get a lot of good chances and good opportunities because I go for this kind of view of marketing, the view with data in marketing, then because I'm different than the other ones. So there are a lot of good opportunities for me. And that is not true for the US, because in the US, almost everyone in marketing is quantitative. So it's different than Brazil. But anyway, you guys may be in law trying to do some kind of experiment or survey and trying to publish a paper with quantitative research might be a good opportunity for you guys to get a chance at a good journal if you get good data again. So thank you everyone again. It was a true pleasure. And I hope you guys get a little bit there excited about quantitative research. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. So guys, we need to wrap up for today, and hope you saw my email where I'm inviting you all to publish in a book that we're organizing here at University Cândido Mendes. And so if you have a paper, just send it to me in those patterns. And that's it. See you in 15 days. And Elisaveta, thanks for being here again. And all of you, thank you for being here. This group wouldn't happen without you. And my dear brother, thanks for the awesome lecture. Thank you very much.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Daniel, may I ask a question about the paper? I haven't seen anything about word limitation, so I was just wondering about that.
No, anything between like 15 to 25 pages or something like that. It's good. Okay, like 10,000 words or something. Okay.
But including references or not?
Yeah, but more between 10,000 and 12,000 words or something like that.
Okay.
It's good.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
See you guys. Thanks, my brother. Bye,
Right,
Elisaveta. Take care,
Nice to meet you all.
everyone.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Daniel. Thank you, Elisaveta. Thank you, George. Thank
Bye.
you, Colin.
Pleasure.
Thank you,
Bye,
everyone.
Prabit.
Bye all.
Goodbye
Take
to
care.
everyone.